Alrighty, I think we can get started. So we have enough time for questions and discussion later on. So hi everyone, good morning. I know it's still kind of early for folks. Thanks so much for joining us. Today, like I said a few minutes ago, this is the Navigating Mainstream Benefits training series. Some of you may have gone to the SSI, SSDI training that we've had. So today we're focusing on the WIC program and general assistance. So yeah, we'll get started. So just a quick intro for myself. My name is Carla and I am from Homebase. And Homebase is a nonprofit technical assistance provider. So we provide support to homeless continuums of care across the country. But we work closely with Santa Clara County's Office of Supportive Housing. And one of the things that we do in our scope with our work with them is bring you trainings.
So is he
And
not talking about this computer?
no. Sorry about that, y'all. If you could please make sure you're muted, that would be great. So yeah, we help to bring these trainings on behalf of the Office of Supportive Housing and including this Navigating Mainstream Benefits series. So we're constantly looking to improve our training. So at the end of the training, we're going to be posting a feedback form link for you to just take a second to fill that out and, make sure that we're being responsive to the feedback that you all provide year after year. And we do look at your feedback. So yeah, so I will remind folks at the end there. So just a few housekeeping things. I know folks are really familiar with Zoom by now. I know I'm fatigued from Zoom at this point, but I just wanted to go over some basic things. So we are recording this training because afterwards we always post the trainings to Santa Clara's Continuum of Care training webpage. And we also send out like the slides, and the slides are posted on that webpage as well. So don't feel like you have to screenshot the slides or anything like that. We are going to keep folks on mute by default since there's so many folks here, but there will be time at the end of each section to ask questions by unmuting yourself. In the meantime, you can feel free to pop in your questions into the chat, and I'll kind of be looking out for those questions and can call them out during the Q&A. If you have tech issues, go ahead and message me directly so I can try to help you. You can also, if you get kicked off of Zoom, you can go ahead and email me. My email is on the screen right now, carla@homebaseccc.org, and I'll be checking my email throughout the presentation and can maybe, try to troubleshoot with you to get you back onto Zoom. And then closed captions are available. So if you hit closed captioning on your screen, you should be able to see them. But if you have any issues with that, please feel free to message me and let me know. And so just to get folks a little warmed up and awake, hoping that folks can type into the chat your name, your organization, if you're with an organization, and whether you prefer coffee or tea. And if you want to share why you have a preference of one over the other, that would be fun to look at too, but you don't need to. I'm definitely a coffee person, but I do like tea, but it doesn't have enough caffeine for me. So just to get us started there. So while folks are warming up in the chat and sharing sort of your preference there and your names, I'm going to go ahead and start screen sharing our WIC program slides. And just for y'all to kind of know the agenda for today, so we're going to start with an overview of the WIC program that Lorena is going to give us, and then we'll have, a little bit of time for questions and answer about the WIC program, and then we're going to move on to the general assistance portion of our presentation today, which will take about 45 minutes or so to an hour of today's time. And then we'll have a question and answer session at the end of that. So yeah, I will go ahead and pass it on to Lorena to get us started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carla. Hi, everyone. My name is Lorena. I am a public health nutritionist. I'm also the regional breastfeeding liaison at the Women, Infants, and Children program, most commonly known as WIC. Joining me is also Joycelyn Mendoza. She is our supervising public health nutritionist who will be helping me answer any questions during our Q&A portion. So before we get started, I'd really appreciate if everyone could take a second to scan the QR code that you see at the top of the slide on the left-hand side. It's a very, very quick survey, should take around 3 seconds at most. And I also want to let you all know that during the presentation, I will be asking some questions throughout, so please feel free to type your answers in the chat. So I'll just give a couple more seconds to scan that QR code, and then we can move on to the next slide. Okay, I think we can go on ahead. All right, so what is WIC's mission? So WIC's mission is to safeguard the health of low-income women, infants, and children up to age 5, specifically those who are at nutrition risk, by providing nutritious foods to supplement their diets, provide them with information on healthy eating, provide them with breastfeeding support, and referrals to healthcare. So when it comes to the benefits of WIC, WIC has been associated with longer and safer pregnancies, less premature births and infant deaths, improved dietary outcomes for infants and children, improved maternal health, improved performance at school, and also savings in healthcare costs compared to non-participants. So participants do need to meet certain qualifications to participate in our program. They must be California residents. They must be in the low to medium income range, meaning 185% of the poverty level. However, if they are receiving Medi-Cal, CalWORKs, or CalFresh, they do automatically, they are considered income eligible, meaning they're adjunctively eligible. I also do want to emphasize that WIC does not check immigration status, so being in the program will not impact a person's immigration status. So who does WIC serve? We do serve a variety of populations. This includes pregnant women, postpartum women, women who have also experienced pregnancy loss, breastfeeding women, infants, children up to age 5, and also dads, grandparents, foster parents, or other legal guardians that are also caring for infants and children. So what are our core services? So our core services include nutrition education, breastfeeding education and support, access to healthy foods, and additional referrals to resources that they may need, maybe like housing, dental or substance or mental health services. So we do provide additional resources as well. So now just going a little bit into the data. This is a breakdown of participation by category for California WIC, and this is data from June of this year. So as you can see, the largest category is made up of children at 61%. Then we have infants at 18%, breastfeeding women at 9%, pregnant women at 8%, and then not breastfeeding women at 4%. So overall, California WIC serves about 1 million participants statewide each month, and about 60% of all California resident births each year are eligible for the WIC program. So now I want to talk a little bit about some data specific to infant feeding choices. Again, this data is from June of this year. And this isn't just data for Santa Clara County Public Health. It also includes our 2 other agencies, the Indian Health Center and Gardner Health Services. So you can see that the top feeding choice is formula across all 3 agencies. So around 41%, 41 to 43%. The next choice is exclusively breastfeeding, so around 28 to 29%. And then we have combination feeding as the third choice with a percentage of around 18 to 21%. So definitely based on this data, we can see that we do still have work to do in regard to increasing those exclusively breastfeeding percentages, especially because the Healthy People 2030 objective is for 51.4% of infants to be breastfed at 1 year. Okay, so here's my first question for everybody. Which of the following group qualifies for WIC in California? So A, residents with high income who do not receive any public assistance. B, residents receiving Medi-Cal, CalWORKs, or CalFresh, regardless of immigration status. C, non-residents with incomes below 185% of the poverty level. Or D, residents with incomes above 185% of the poverty level who are not participating in any public assistance programs. So feel free to type your answer in the chat. I do already see some answers are popping in there. And I see a lot of B's, B, 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 C, all of them. So almost everyone got the right answer. So the answer is B. It is residents receiving Medi-Cal, CalWORKs, or CalFresh, regardless of immigration status. A is not the correct answer because of the high income. C doesn't work because they're non-California residents, and D doesn't work because the income is above 185% of the poverty level. So because WIC promotes breastfeeding as the norm for feeding infants, we do have various ways that we support breastfeeding. We have International Board Certified Lactation Consultants, or IBCLCs. We have, on our staff, we have a breastfeeding peer counselor program, and we also have a breastfeeding support line. So that SCC WIC number is listed there. And for those who are not WIC participants, we do refer them to the Nursing Mothers Council. And we also have a breast pump loan program. So I do want to note that Gardner and Indian Health do not have a peer counselor program, but they do have IBCLCs on staff. All right, so as I mentioned, here at Santa Clara County Public Health WIC, we do have a breastfeeding peer counselor program. And our peer counselors are really enthusiastic about breastfeeding. They have been trained in breastfeeding support. They themselves have personal breastfeeding experience. They were also recruited from the target population, and they speak the language. We do have a large percentage of Spanish-speaking participants, so most of our peer counselors do speak Spanish. They do help counsel to help avoid common breastfeeding problems. They provide support to those who are working or going to school. They can also make immediate additional referrals if they find that the participant needs them, but they do not give medical advice. So as I mentioned, we also do have a breast pump loan program for those that are unable to get a pump from their insurance. And we have manual and hospital grade electric breast pumps available to those that meet the established criteria. So this is the card that's issued to all of our participants. There is also an app that they can download to their phone where they can see all of their future appointments, their food balance, WIC office locations, where to find WIC qualifying groceries. And there's also a very handy scanner that they can use to scan specific foods when they're at the store to let them know if that item is covered by WIC. So we do recommend them to download it if they can and they are able. So the food packages that are issued by WIC are consistent with current dietary guidelines. They provide incentives for breastfeeding. There's an emphasis to really encourage consuming more fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and to reduce saturated fat consumption. So this is a comparison of different food packages, and this is specific to participants who are fully breastfeeding versus those that are mostly breastfeeding and those that are doing some or no breastfeeding. So as you can see, the participant who is fully breastfeeding will get the largest food package, and they qualify for the program up to 1 year. So the less the participant is breastfeeding, the smaller the food package. And when they're breastfeeding some or not at all, they also only qualify for the program up to 6 months. And you can also see here that fully breastfed babies will also get the largest food package as well, but they will continue to be in the program up until 5. All right, and then this is an example of the package for children, starting when they turn 1. The food package for children pretty much stays the same from 1 to 5, except for the milk and dairy options. So when they're 1, they're receiving the whole milk, whole fat dairy products, whereas once they turn 2, they start receiving the low fat options. So when it comes to formula, although here at WIC, we really promote fully breastfeeding as the norm for infant feeding, and this is really including those infants who are sick or premature. We do have formula available for moms who need it, and WIC covers Similac formula products, and our plant-based or soy-based option is Enfamil. And we can provide standard formula up to 1 year of age. So in terms of therapeutic formula is only covered for infants and children with special nutrition and medical conditions. So just to give some examples of qualifying medical conditions, these include prematurity, low birth weight, failure to thrive, different gastrointestinal disorders, inborn errors of metabolism, severe food allergies. And then we have some examples of non-qualifying diagnoses, which would include colic, constipation, poor appetite, maybe they're a picky eater, some fussiness, gas, or spitting up. And before requesting therapeutic formula from WIC, the participant's doctor must first refer them to their health plan or to Medi-Cal to obtain that formula or that medical food from them. At that point, if they're unable to get the formula, or it's denied, or it's in a pending status from Medi-Cal, then they can send that request to us. But a form is needed to be filled out with, again, a qualifying medical diagnosis for how long, which type of formula, and again, this needs to be signed by the doctor. So it is, again, we are the second option here for the therapeutic formula. Okay, so here is my second question for everybody. What are the 4 core services offered by the WIC program? A, housing assistance, job training, childcare support, and transportation services. B, nutrition education, healthy foods, breastfeeding support and resources. C, financial aid, health insurance, legal services, and employment counseling. Or D, mental health services, substance abuse counseling, fitness programs, and dental care. So I do see some answers in the chat already. Yep, B, 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 yep. Didn't realize I put another B answer here, but yes, that is the correct answer. It is B. Again, we provide nutrition education, healthy foods, breastfeeding support, and resources. All of the other answers provide or have services that we don't provide, but we can offer some referrals to some of these, like housing, mental health services, but we don't provide them ourselves. All right, so for referrals, when it comes to referrals, this referral option can be done by providers or community programs. So this is done by completing the WIC enrollment form that you can see here. And this link takes you to that form. So you can, I believe you'll be receiving the PowerPoint, so you can click on that link to get access to the form. So to provide a referral, this form can be completed by the provider or the community program. And once it's completed, it can be emailed to us or it can be faxed to us. And once we receive it, then we will call the patient or participant and screen them, do the whole process with them. But you know, although this referral, the referral form is ideal to have, participants can also just call or walk into one of our offices or text us and let us know that they are interested in applying. So, you know, our representatives will help them begin with the screening process, let them know what they need. So it is nice to have, but it's not, it's also not a requirement to have. And we do have I do have more information on additional options on how to refer patients on our provider site. So again, if you want to click the link, there is more information in terms of medical providers that they can refer other patients through that way as well. But again, this is our standard form that any community member can use. So as I mentioned earlier, there are 3 different agencies that participants can choose to go to. We have Santa Clara County Public Health Department, which is where we are from. There's also Gardner Health Services, and there's the Indian Health Center of Santa Clara Valley. So again, participants are welcome to call the number, text, or email and let us know that they would like to apply. So there are offices spanning from Milpitas all the way to Gilroy. So what we generally recommend is going to the one that's closest to their residential address. So here in Santa Clara County Public Health Department, we specifically do have 7 offices across the county. So again, participants can choose the one that's closest to them as their primary office. And all of our offices are open in person from 8 to 5 p.m. with the exception of our Milpitas office, which is sometimes closed. So it is noted on our website to give us a call if they do plan on visiting our Milpitas office, just to double check that it is open. Okay, here is question number 3. True or false, a referral is required for a family to enroll on WIC? Okay, I see false, false, false. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for everyone's participation. That is the correct answer. It is false. So anyone interested in applying for the WIC program, again, can call, text, or walk into our office, speak with our staff, and begin the screening process. Again, the referrals are welcome, but they are not required. So we have a wide variety of educational materials on many different topics, most of which are available in English and Spanish. We do also have some other languages available depending on the material. But if you would like any specific materials, please feel free to reach out to me, let me know, and I can send them to you. These are some more examples of other materials that we have. The breastfeeding versus formula comparison is a popular one, as well as the hospital experience. So again, many different topics that I'm happy to share with if you find that you would like.
Thanks, Lynn. I just wanted to say, Daniel, we see your hand, but we'll kind of hold your question, and we're quickly approaching the Q&A very soon. Thanks so much.
All right, so just to give some updates, we're doing appointments by phone and in person. We do give the participants the choice to choose what they prefer. We have noticed people are still preferring the phone appointments. Sometimes it can be hard for participants to come to the office in person, whether they don't have transportation access or, it can be hard. So we do see most people are preferring the phone appointments. As I mentioned, all of our 7 clinics are open between 8 to 5, for the exception of our Milpitas office that is sometimes closed. And I just wanted to give an update. So the most recent update on the cash value benefit, specifically for fruits and vegetables, is now, so for breastfeeding moms, they are getting $52. For pregnant or non-breastfeeding moms, they're getting $47, and children are getting $26. All right, and then another thing I want to talk about is the Farmers Market Nutrition Program that we have happening now. It happens every year starting in June. So the Farmers Market Nutrition Program was established to provide fresh, unprepared, locally grown fruits and vegetables to WIC participants, also to really help expand the awareness, the use of and sales at farmers markets. So qualifying participants can receive 1 booklet per family, and each booklet has 3 checks in them, and each check is worth $10. So it's a total of $30 they can use to purchase fresh fruits, vegetables, and fresh cut herbs at participating farmers markets. Because we don't receive a booklet for every single family in the program, they are distributed on a first come, first served basis. And they do have until November 30th to use their checks. All right, and here is my last question for everybody. How many WIC agencies are in Santa Clara County? Okay, I'm starting to see some different answers here. I see 7, 7, 14, 3, 7, 7, 3. Yeah, maybe this is a trick question. Okay, so here the answer is 3. So there are 3 local agencies. There's Santa Clara County Public Health Department, there's Gardner Health Services, and Indian Health Center. So I think the 7 probably came from the offices. So specifically, Santa Clara County Public Health has 7 offices. Indian Health and Gardner have their own offices. So, but specific agencies, there are 3 agencies. All right, and this is just my contact information for everyone to have if you want to reach out to me with any questions. All right, and we're ready for questions.
Great, thanks, Lynn. I'll call on Daniel first. Daniel, if you want to unmute yourself. All right, maybe we'll, oh, okay, can't unmute yourself. Let's see if I can go ahead and unmute you. If folks just want to, in that case, maybe if the settings are set to where you can't unmute yourself, just go ahead and, oh, okay, it's on your end. No worries, Daniel. If you want to type out your question, I can read it out loud. Perfect. And I also wanted to acknowledge too, we had another question that was already answered by Joycelyn, but somebody asked if a client moved to a new address within a county and was previously going to a Gardner WIC office, can they easily switch and walk into another Santa Clara WIC closer to their new address? And then Joycelyn responded that yes, the WIC program is nationwide. So it seems like it's pretty easy for folks who maybe have moved to another area.
Yes, they can easily transfer over their account to wherever they just relocated. Yes.
Awesome. Anyone else have questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself or post it in the chat.
Good morning, everybody. I was in 5 minutes late. Just wanted to confirm we're going to be getting copies of the particular presentation today.
Hi, Maria. Thanks for joining us. Absolutely. We will send a copy of the slides and also we will post the recording on the CoC website.
Great. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Juan, go ahead.
I'm not sure if I missed it, but the cutoff age for WIC?
So children up to age 5, so they can't be 6 or 5.5.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And then Daniel posted their question in the chat and said, clients can apply for themselves without a referral, but are there any benefits from getting a referral?
So the referrals are just helpful to get more information. We are going to need ultimately the same information from the patient, but the referral makes it a little bit easier since it has all that information that we need on there.
Folks have any other questions? All right. Well, if folks don't have any other questions, we will go ahead and move on to our general assistance portion of the training. Thank you so much, Lorena and Joycelyn, for being here today to answer folks' questions. If folks do end up thinking of any other questions about the WIC program specifically, please feel free to post it in the chat and I can pass that on to Lorena and Joycelyn via email and then get back to you. And yeah, thank you so much for the great information.
Thank you so much, everybody. And then in the slides, there will be a post-survey QR code. If you're able to, please scan that and give us your feedback. That would be amazing.
Thanks, Lorena. We'll remind folks of that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and transition over to general assistance. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. And today we've got the pleasure of having Rachel and Maya who are going to present the materials for us, the content for us today. So I will go ahead and pass it to Rachel and Maya.
Thanks so much, Carla, and thank you for everybody for being here to hear Maya and I speak to you about the General Assistance Program, or as we commonly refer to it, GA. My name is Rachel Mino. I'm a supervising attorney at the Law Foundation. I supervise our team in the health program. And I'll pause just for a moment to let Maya introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maya Fagan, and I'm a staff attorney in the health program.
Thanks so much for having us here. So we're going to present to you an overview of general assistance. Next slide. I just wanted to give a roadmap for where we are headed today. So today we will talk about a few different things. First, we're going to introduce the Law Foundation, so people who are not familiar with our services yet can learn a little bit more about what the Law Foundation does in general, including what our health program does. The health program is the team that Maya and I are with. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what general assistance is in general and how to apply for those benefits. We will then talk a little bit about the eligibility process, so what criteria people have to meet in order to be eligible. And then with, as is the case with all public benefits to which people are entitled, when somebody receives benefits, they have due process rights before those benefits may either be halted or stopped, or before an overpayment is issued. So we're going to talk about some legal issues or some due process rights, and how to appeal decisions that you don't agree with if you receive a decision with respect to your general assistance benefits that is negatively impacting you and you want to take some action in response. We'll go over at the end GA and how it relates to SSI and CAPI, and we'll talk about SSI as supplemental security income, and CAPI is the cash aid program for immigrants. And then we'll spend a few minutes at the end allowing Q&A for questions about the general assistance program in Santa Clara County. Okay, so with that agenda, that roadmap, let's delve into what is the Law Foundation. So the Law Foundation is a legal aid organization that has been in operation since, I believe it's 1976. I think it's 1976. I always forget whether it's 74 or 76. But the Law Foundation has been around for a very long time. It's comprised of 3 groups right now. We've had different iterations within the Law Foundation, but right now we have a children and youth program, a housing program, and a health program. And the health program specifically provides free legal advice and representation to Santa Clara County residents who identify as living with a mental health disability. We also provide free legal help, including advice and representation to persons who receive medical services through the VHHP, Valley Homeless Healthcare Program, or through Valley Medical Center's Valley Specialty Center clinics, or people who receive services through the Valley Health Center Downtown Clinic, the Gender Health Center, and generally to people who are experiencing homelessness in Santa Clara County. That's got quite a few different categories of individuals that we serve. I think the best question is, when in doubt, if you think somebody is potentially eligible for our services, have them call. If we can't serve them, we provide counsel. If we can't take them on for like ongoing representation or even limited services, we can still provide some counsel and advice and referrals. And it's helpful to know that in order to access our services, there's a couple of different ways that clients can do that, or that you can refer clients to us, or you can even call if you have a client that needs to get in touch with us. We have a walk-in intake hours. So every Tuesday and Thursday between 1 and 3 p.m., people can just walk right in. We usually, maybe if more than one person walks in, you might have to wait 20-30 minutes to see one of us, but typically walk-ins are pretty quick and easy to get one of our intake workers to meet with. And our office is located at 4 North 2nd Street. We are on the 13th floor, and that's here in downtown San Jose. If somebody's not able to walk in, they can call. We do have a phone line that is open for live calls Monday through Thursday from 1 to 4 p.m. And then if somebody's not calling between those hours, you can still call and leave a voicemail. We pick up voicemails, and we do callbacks typically in the mornings, Monday through Thursday. So if you're not able to call during a live call hour, that's totally fine. Just leave a message and one of our intake specialists will get back to you. And we've listed our phone number and fax below as well. Okay, next slide. So let's talk a little bit about what is general assistance. General assistance is governed by statute. So in the Welfare and Institution Code here in California at section 1700 and following statutes, the law states that every county and every city and county shall relieve and support all incompetent, poor, indigent persons and those who are incapacitated by age, disease, or accident, lawfully resident therein, meaning lawfully residing in the county, when such persons are not supported and relieved by their relatives or friends, by their own means, or by state hospitals or other private institutions. So it's a fancy legal way of saying that Every single county within California is required to run a general assistance or general relief program, and the intent or purpose of that program is to provide some source of steady income, even though it's not a lot, but some source of steady income for people in our community who have no other basis for income, and who may have age-related issues, which means that they can't work or provide income other ways, or maybe they have some type of physical health disability, or maybe they've had an accident so they can't work, and they don't have any other means of income. So it is basically a welfare benefit of last resort. And what we have linked here is the handbook to Santa Clara County's General Assistance Program. So as mandated by state law, every county has to run their own program. Santa Clara County has a General Assistance Program, and we often refer to the General Assistance Handbook when we need to see exactly how our county is running its program and what the policies and procedures are around the General Assistance Program in California, in Santa Clara County. Suffice it to say that the state has mandated this law, but the state has left a lot of discretion up to each county to run its own program, subject to some very basic or minimum requirements. So you may see a lot of differentiation between general assistance programs county to county, but if you want to know more about the way our Santa Clara County runs its program, the handbook that has been linked right here is a great tool. Okay, next slide. So let's break down a little bit about a little bit of that statute that we read on the prior slide. So essentially what that Welfare and Institution Code section 1700 is saying is that general assistance is a county program that is going to provide a modest monthly cash grant for adults without children. And you can see adults without children is bolded, and that's because, and I think we referenced this in a subsequent slide, there are other programs, other welfare benefits programs for adults who do have children. So this is for childless adults who are indigent in the community and have no other means for providing for themselves. You'll sometimes see general assistance called general relief, or sometimes people just refer to it as GA or GR. Each county sets its own standards, again, subject to some very basic minimum requirements promulgated by the state. The benefits range from $11 a month up to $343 a month. So again, it's a very modest amount of money. It's not a lot. And the monthly benefits, which you can see are not going to be the exact same amount for every single person, but the monthly benefits are calculated based on the information that the applicant gives to the eligibility worker when he, she, or they are applying for general assistance. If somebody has any type of other income, it may lower their benefit amount. So that person may not be eligible for $343 if maybe they get, $20 a month from a church that helps support them or provides something for them. Or try to think of other examples. Maybe if somebody did some very, 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 very basic work for a friend or a neighbor and collected $50 helping rake leaves or something like that. I'm just thinking of hypotheticals. That income has to be reported, and it may lower the benefit amount, but it doesn't necessarily mean the person's ineligible. It's just important to be accurate with your eligibility worker about whether there is any other income available to you so that the benefit rate can be properly calculated. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now we talked about what general assistance is essentially based on the statute that has required counties to administer this program. Let's talk about who's eligible for general assistance benefits in our county. So first, the person applying for general assistance must be a resident of our county. And resident is defined as somebody who has been 15 days continually physically present in the county and has an intent to remain indefinitely in our county. So it's just a basic residency requirement, right? You can't just be passing through. You must have been here for at least 15 days and have the intent to stay in the county. You don't have to have an address. Many recipients of GA are homeless, and that's okay. You can say, I'm unhoused. So residency doesn't require that you have an address. It just means that you're present in the county. You also either have to be a US citizen or have legal immigration status. So unfortunately, for persons with who are undocumented, general assistance benefits are not going to be available. You have to be an adult, meaning you're 18 years or older, and you do not have children. So general assistance, as is stated here in the parentheses, it's a financial assistance for adults without dependent children. Typically, adults with dependent children will be eligible for other benefits, for example, CalWorks, which is not the subject of today's presentation, but just for all of you to know, if you have adults who do have children, they're not going to qualify for, and I should say adults with dependent children, right? So you may be an adult and have children, but those children are not dependent on you anymore. That's fine. You're going to qualify for GA. But if you're an adult with dependent children, you're not going to qualify for the program. And of course, you must have no other means of support, so you can't be receiving SSI or CAPI or other benefits, or you can't be working and having lots of income that exceeds the GA threshold. So it is a program of last resort. You can't be eligible for any other cash aid programs, so CalWorks is a cash aid program, Supplemental Security Income, SSI, is a cash aid program, state disability insurance, if you're receiving that, which can last for up to 52 weeks, or if you're receiving unemployment insurance. Any of those benefits are going to disqualify you from GA, but sometimes people may be on SDI for a period of time or UI, and their SDI or UI expires or terminates because the program for SDI and UI has limited timeframes. Then that person coming off of SDI or UI may then be eligible for GA if they don't have that cash aid program any benefit anymore. But while you're receiving any other cash aid, you're not going to be eligible for general assistance. And then finally, an important eligibility requirement is either that you're unemployed, you're employed but making less than the grant level, or you're unemployable due to a disability, meaning you would work but for the fact that you have physical or mental health impairments that prohibit you from doing so. So those are the main categories for GA eligibility that it's important to be aware of. Okay, so now you're thinking, oh, I have a client who may want to apply. How does that client go ahead and do so? So there's a lot of different ways to contact and communicate with social services to let them know that you are interested in applying for general assistance or GA. You can begin your application online, you can call in, you can mail, you can fax, or you can even walk in person to a social services office. Online, there's a great website, Benefits Cal, and we've included the not the hyperlink because you can't click on it, but the URL information right here. So clients can go on to Benefits Cal and start an application online. I'm really pleased to share that our office is a CBO, or a community-based organization that has a relationship with social services, and so they've given us access to Benefits Cal, and we can help people apply for GA online on the benefits.cal.com website. And so if you know a client who's just concerned about having to apply on their own, they'd like some help or assistance, they can always call our office, and one of our advocates can help that person start a GA application online. And once that GA application is submitted online, either with our assistance or the client just feels comfortable enough to do it on their own, that person will be called and scheduled for an interview after that initial online application is processed. And that interview is where the worker is going to ask for certain information to confirm eligibility, and other factors such as, like, do you have income anywhere else? Are you employable? Do you have a disability? Things like that. So that interview will take place, and then assuming everything goes fine with the interview, then benefits should start shortly thereafter. You can also call the number listed and say, I'd like to make an appointment to apply for GA benefits, and then you will get an interview scheduled, and then you'll get a phone call for that interview. And it'll be very much like submitting it on Benefits Cal. Same thing, you're just calling in and making your intent to apply for GA known, and then you'll have an interview set up after your application is initially processed. You can also do a paper application, mail it to the PO box, or fax it into the number listed here. Or social services has its offices open Monday to Friday from 8 to 5. And so you can walk into the offices on Center Road, or there's a couple other locations, and I believe we have them listed towards the end of the presentation, or if not, I can share them with you widely. And so those offices are open every day except for holidays, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So walking in person to start an application is fine too. And then similar to all of the other options, once you've submitted that application and they've processed it, they'll call you for a phone interview. Next slide. Yes, okay, so South Bay offices, so this is, when we're speaking about walking in, if you wanted to walk in, there are a couple of different offices. South Bay, we've differentiated, there is an office in Mountain View, so North County office listed here as well, but South Bay just generally refers to everything from Mountain View down on, right? I'm sure there's other offices North Bay, like head towards San Francisco, but for our population in Santa Clara County, it's helpful to know that the locations that a person can go to are the General Assistance Services Road on 1919 Center Road, Benefits Assistance Center, which is right down the street on 1867 Center Road. There's a North County office in Mountain View, and there's a South County office in Gilroy. I just wanted to distinguish with respect to the two offices on Center Road. General Assistance Services at 1919 Center Road was the right place to go to start an application. And then if you're on benefits and you have questions or concerns about it, the Benefit Assistance Center right down the street is a good place to go. But I always like to think of it as no wrong door. So if you hop on down to 1919 Center Road and they say, oh, actually, this is actually better handled at Benefits Assistance Center, they'll write the person up a little slip, and the person can walk down to 1867 Center Road or vice versa and say, I got this little referral slip from the office down the street. They'd sent me here. So, whether you show up to 1919 or 1867, if you're not in the right place, they'll give you a referral slip and send you down to the other office. So, but just generally speaking, applying for general assistance would be at 1919, and the questions related to your benefits would be at 1867 Center Road. Next slide. Okay, so when you go to apply, you're going to need, and if you're doing your application online, you can Benefits Cal, you can upload as much of this as possible. If you're doing it via paper, you can't send the stuff in, then at some point you'll be asked to bring it into the offices or share it with the eligibility worker. But here are some of the things you're going to need to prove that you are eligible for GA benefits. So you'll either need a picture ID or a driver's license. If you don't have that, you can have two pieces of ID, which have a signature and a physical description. A lot of times people don't have a picture ID or a driver's license, especially if they're unhoused. And that's also a good reason to send them to our offices, because we are allowed to help clients obtain a free or low cost ID or driver's license. If they're unhoused, we can help them get a free one. So if people are concerned about, well, I can't go ahead and apply, I don't even have the ID, they can still come to us, because we can direct them to the DMV and give them a form that they can complete and turn in so that they can get a free or reduced fee ID. But they will need either a picture ID, driver's license, or two pieces of ID with a description on it that identifies them as who they say they are. They will need some type of proof of residence in Santa Clara County, rent, receipts, utility bills, ID. Again, this is sometimes difficult if a person's unhoused, they might not have a rent receipt or utility bill, but in that case, an ID might be helpful. So go back to item number one, and especially if somebody can't get an ID because they're unhoused, come to us so we can help them troubleshoot that. The person should have a social security card or an application for a social security number. Again, that's free, and sometimes people have a little bit of difficulty navigating Social Security to figure out what they need to do to make sure they get a copy of their card. So we can also provide a form. It's the SS5 to help people obtain a Social Security card if they need it. So feel free again to send clients who are concerned about this to our office, and we can help them troubleshoot that. They'll also need to have proof of immigration status or citizenship, so a birth certificate, an alien registration card or a green card, proof of property. So sometimes, if there is no property, it's hard to prove a negative, but if there is property, the social services worker will want to see bank statements, car registration if the person owns a car, and any documents that show value of property. If there's any income, they'll have to provide pay stubs, any award letters. Award letters are for things like if you are getting money from some other program, there'll be a letter saying, here's how much you're entitled to. And any documents that show where income that is in your bank account came from. And if you have any shelter costs or expenses, you should bring in proof of your housing bills or utility bills as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, so a couple slides ago, I mentioned that your benefit amount may vary from as low as $11 up to as high as $343, although it is slightly higher if there's multiple people receiving GA. The $11 to $343 is really contingent upon whether there's other income from other sources. But generally speaking, if you are an individual who is living alone, you should receive the full general assistance grant amount of $343. If you are a person and you're living with others, then your benefit rate is going to be reduced to anywhere between $257 and $292. If it's a husband and wife who are both on general assistance and they're living together, the rate would be a total of $460. It goes down slightly if the husband and wife, and I think husband and wife, but it's probably spouse and spouse. So spouse and spouse who are living with others would also be slightly reduced to $345 to $392, contingent upon how many people the spouses are living with. And then if you're an individual who's living in a state licensed boarding care, the GA payment actually goes up to $929, but most of that money is going directly to the boarding care home, and the client has $28 left over at the end of the month as just disposable income for themselves. Okay, and that was effective as of 2016, so you can see these numbers don't change very frequently. There's no cost of living adjustment, unfortunately, as there is with, for example, SSI or Social Security disability benefits. So these rates are pretty stagnant, unfortunately. Okay, next slide. Okay, so for a period of time, Santa Clara County had a rule stating that if you were an unhoused applicant, you were not going to get the full $343 because you had no shelter to pay for. And then due to some litigation that took place, I believe in Alameda County, and some case law that came out of that benefited unhoused individuals, case law came down that basically said if you're unhoused, you're still entitled to the full GA rate. So I just wanted to give everybody an overview about how our unhoused folks in the county should be receiving the full GA rate unless a couple of exceptions apply, which we're going to talk about here. So as I've noted on the slide, previously our county did not provide unhoused GA recipients the full rate of $343 based on the rationale that unhoused individuals did not have rent expenses, so they didn't need the full $343. But this policy changed, and it's been a good, I want to say 5 years since the policy's changed. So now the county must first offer the unhoused individual a shelter or motel bed and say, okay, I can't give you the full $343 until I've offered you the shelter or motel bed. Would you like to accept it or decline it? If the individual accepts or declines the bed, the county can then reduce the GA amount accordingly. But it's important to know that sometimes unhoused individuals decline the shelter or motel bed for reasons that are very understandable. So if that's the case, then it's okay to decline the shelter bed or the motel bed and still get the full $343 rate. And sometimes there's no shelter bed or motel bed to offer at all, in which case then the $343 has to be accessible to the person as well. So reasons why a person may be offered a shelter or motel bed, but then decline it and then still be eligible for $343, even though they've declined housing, is that, for example, maybe somebody needs a support animal in the shelter. We're not allowed pets, an emotional support animal, a disability services animal. And if that shelter says, no, we can't take cats or dogs or whatever the pet might be, then the person has a reasonable right to say, I'm so sorry, I'm declining that option, and still qualify for the full $343 rate. Another example, and again, these are not exclusive, so there's other examples too that may result in a person being able to decline the bed and still get the full rate. But another really important example is when somebody has past trauma that's triggered by staying at a shelter or motel, in which case, even if they're offered a bed, they may reasonably say, no, I'd like to decline it. And then they would still be eligible for the full $343 rate, despite the fact that they've declined the the shelter and motel bed offer. So please keep an eye out for clients who are unhoused but not receiving the full $343. And if you see clients in that situation, feel free to refer them to us so that we can do some investigation and assistance. Okay, next slide. Okay, so typically when somebody applies for general assistance, it takes 45 days for the county to determine eligibility and start issuing payments. But if a person needs an emergency cash aid and they're eligible for GA, the county may make an emergency support payment pending the final determination of eligibility. But unfortunately, it won't exceed 25% of the maximum monthly aid the person is entitled to. And so, emergency support payments are not a panacea to the problem, but it's just important to know that they do exist. So if you have a client who thinks that they're entitled to emergency support payments, we encourage them to tell their social services worker or the eligibility worker that they'd like to be considered for an emergency support payment. Okay, next slide. Okay, and when does a person's GA or general assistance begin? So there's two dates to be aware of. First, there's the date of filing, which is the date the applicant submits the signed application for general assistance and an identification and intake record. And then there's the first date on which general assistance becomes effective. It's effective either the earlier of the two following dates, the date of determination of eligibility, which is when the eligibility worker is verified everything and says, yes, this person's eligible, or the 10th day following the date of filing a signed application. So if it takes an eligibility worker, 30 days or 45 days to make a determination of eligibility, then the person's actually going to be receiving GA assistance or have their GA become effective even earlier, because the earlier of those two options is the 10th day following the date they filed the signed application. So again, it's the earlier of the two dates, the date of determination of eligibility, or if that takes too long, the 10th day following the date of filing a signed application. Next slide. Okay, this is my last slide before I hand off to Maya. And I know that there's Q&A coming through, but I think somebody noted, Carla's noting the questions in order, and we can hold on to those and answer them in the Q&A session. So thank you for doing that. And I will just finish up my portion of the presentation by just mentioning that, sometimes people have housing, and part of their GA payment needs to be paid towards the landlord. And so when there is a payment to a landlord by the General Assistance Office, there's a couple of different ways that money, the GA, a portion of the GA, which is set aside for housing, can be sent to the landlord. So either the general assistant recipient or applicant can choose to receive their personal needs money, which is a portion of the 343, I think, and then the remainder of the maximum GA payment can be sent directly to their landlord, in which case social services is just paying the landlord directly and giving the applicant their personal needs money separately. A person can also say, I don't want my personal needs money at all. I will have the entire maximum GA payment of 343 sent directly to my landlord. And typically it's just important to know that 147 is the personal needs amount. And then the rest of the 343 is for the vendor payment. But if somebody owes more for rent, they may want the full 343 sent directly to the landlord. And verification of the housing cost has to be provided to social services in order for social services to make these payments to the landlord. So verification can be provided either because it's reported to the IRS and the State Franchise Tax Board as income to the landlord. So there's a W-9 form that the landlord can fill out and submit as verification of the housing cost. Or there's a GA-11 that a client can sign, which is the client's housing assistance statement form. And those are the two manners in which the verification of housing costs can be provided to social services in order to enable social services to pay a landlord for housing costs. And with that, I will turn it over to Maya.
Okay, next slide.
I think I
Okay.
changed.
Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry, it took a second to load for me. So now I'm going to talk about staying on general assistance. There are some requirements to continue your eligibility for the program. The first one is employment. So as a GA recipient, you're required to work or look for work unless you're deemed unemployable. That means that you must participate in a vocational services program through the county. You must make a good faith effort to make employment contacts every month, and up to 24 contacts can be required. So reaching out to jobs, applying to jobs, speaking with employers, that type of thing. An unemployable means that you cannot work due to a physical or mental health disability. The standard for disability is a little less stringent than you'll see in a disability program like SDI or SSI. There is a form that a doctor needs to complete that attests to the physical or mental limitations of the applicant in order for them to be deemed unemployable and excused from those employment outreach requirements. If a recipient fails to comply with these requirements, the work-related provision requirements, the county can propose a sanction. And if they do that, then that person would be automatically scheduled for an appeal hearing. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. If a GA recipient has any changes to income or employment circumstances, if they receive any money, that, might put them over the limit, they need to report that to the county within 10 days. And they can do that by reaching out to their eligibility worker, or they can do that by completing a SAR-7, which is the form to update the county on your financial situation. And as far as personal property allowances, so while you're on the GA program, you can only have $500 in personal property. You can also have a car, but it can only be valued up to $4,650, and that won't be considered if it's less than that amount. I will also mention that there are some reasons why a person might not be able to meet the employment requirement for good faith reasons. So for example, if you were offered a job but weren't able to accept that job because the terms of the job were too onerous for your mental or physical capacity, or it paid less than the state minimum hourly wage, or it violated health and safety laws, there's a whole list of reasons why a person might not be able to accept a offer of employment and still remain eligible for the GA program. Next slide. Okay, so due process requirements. Whenever the county takes an action to change someone's GA benefits, they do need to let you know within 7 days for a negative action, including reductions and terminations. And they typically do that through a paper mailing. You can receive aid, or sorry, you can appeal this decision. So if your benefits have been reduced or terminated, you can appeal that decision and you can request aid paid pending, which means that you'll continue to receive general assistance benefits until the county makes a decision about, whether there was a mistake or not. But you do need to request that within 7 days on the notice of action. You also get 5 days for mailing, so it's about 12 days. But it's a very short window, and it's very easy for people to miss if they don't have consistent access to their mail. So just something to be aware of. And then hearings, you do have the right to request a hearing once you've received a negative decision from the county. Okay, so appeals. Again, this is the appeals process that I just mentioned in terms of requesting a hearing. There are several ways to request a hearing. They're all listed here. You can do it in person. You can request it by mail, by fax, by phone, and on the Benefits Cal website. Let's see. And then I think the next slide will get into some of the deadlines for that. Yeah. So the appeal deadline is 30 days from the notice of action plus 5 days for mailing. So whatever the date is on the notice plus 35 days. If you miss the deadline for some reason, they can still request an appeal with good cause for late filing, but they have to have an explanation for why they weren't able to file within the deadline. Sometimes that's because they were in the hospital, they were sick, they didn't have access to their mail. Maybe they never even got this particular letter and they only found out about their GA benefits being reduced or terminated once they didn't see it in their bank account, that kind of thing. And it's generally fairly lenient in terms of accepting good cause reasons for late filing, but that's something that needs to be explicitly asked for when an appeal is filed late. Again, the aid paid pending deadline within 7 days of the notice of action. Hearing should be scheduled within 45 days of the request for hearing, and a decision should be issued within 90 days. Okay, so resolving issues and other tips, we just wanted to mention, this is kind of like the general process that we would use to approach a client who comes to us with a GA issue. So the first thing would be getting a signed release of information. The county has its own ROI, and we'll actually try to include a copy of that when we send out the slides. So we would have them sign that. We would then reach out to their eligibility worker, and the eligibility worker is listed on the top right corner of any GA notice that they receive. So that's the best way to get it in touch with someone who is familiar with the case, has worked with this client, and can actually implement any of the changes or look at the case and get you any information that you might need to know about why their benefits were stopped or reduced. If you feel like you're not getting anywhere with the eligibility worker, you can contact their supervisor or ask to contact their supervisor. And if that fails as well, you can contact the DEBS ombudsman, Mariela Moncayo. She's very responsive. Her email is listed on this slide. And that's once you've kind of, exhausted the standard channels for trying to resolve the issue, you can elevate it up to the ombudsman. And then if that isn't solving your issue, we would recommend referring for legal assistance. You could come to the Law Foundation, and there are a few other legal aid organizations that would be able to help with the GA issue. Next slide. And this is just the ROI, and we'll send out a PDF copy of that as well. Next slide. Okay, so some other issues that we see coming up fairly often for homeless individuals who don't have a consistent address to receive mail, they can use a mailing address of a friend, a relative, a PO box. They can have it mailed to the social services district office and pick up their mail there, or general delivery services from USPS. They do need to submit a form to let social services know that they're going to be receiving their mail at someone else's address, or that they want to receive it at a social services district office, and that's the SCD 1483 form. If an applicant isn't able to come to the GA office for an initial interview for some reason, they can request a home visit, or if they're hospitalized, they can request a visit at VMC if they're inpatient. A lot of interviews are being completed over the phone since the pandemic began, so that may not be an issue. But if a home visit is required, they can if an in-person visit is required, they can request it at home. As far as language access, GA applicants have the right to receive services in their primary language, so that means receiving notices in their language, as well as communications with social services staff. They can ask to use an interpreter. And then vendor payments. So as Rachel mentioned earlier, when a person is paying rent to a landlord, they can have their shelter benefit sent directly to their landlord to pay for rent. But if a landlord, isn't cooperating, isn't filling out the necessary paperwork to get that set up as a vendor, they can still receive that portion of the benefit by completing a form called the GA11, and payment will be issued via warrant to the landlord. So they don't necessarily need the landlord's cooperation if they find that they're having difficulties getting them to fill out paperwork. Next slide. So one common myth that we hear a lot is that GA is a loan, and it was that way for a long time. It still is that way in some other counties. But in Santa Clara County, it's no longer considered a loan. So you aren't going to be asked at some point to pay back the benefit. There are some situations where you would need to pay back the county for benefits, and that's if you are eligible and approved for SSI for the months you receive GA. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But basically, if you're approved for SSI, the time in between your approval and when you start receiving benefits, during which you're still receiving that GA money, that is reimbursable from your SSI retroactive benefits. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then also, if you received an overpayment in GA benefits, they may ask you to pay that back. You still have all the same appeal rights that you would as if your benefits were reduced or terminated. So you can appeal, you can have a hearing with a hearings officer, et cetera. And next slide. So I think someone asked this in the chat about the applying for SSI. So you are required to apply for SSI or retirement survivors disability insurance as a requirement of participating in the GA program. And the idea is that GA is the program of last resort, and so the county wants you to exhaust all of your options for federal funding before you exclusively rely on general assistance benefits. So the county does provide social workers who will assist with applications, appeals, and referrals to Social Security attorneys. So if you meet a client who wants to apply for GA, it's just something to let them know that they may also be required to apply for SSI, and they can do so using the county social worker who should be able to assist them. And there's the phone number for the SSI advocacy program another good resource if you're trying to help someone apply for SSI. General assistance may be discontinued if a recipient fails to file a timely appeal or an appeal with good cause for late filing with SSA. So for example, if they get denied from SSI at the initial level, they are expected to appeal that and continue to pursue the benefit as long as possible. And next slide. So this is a slide about non-citizen eligibility for the GA program. It just kind of lays out some of the requirements that you must be a citizen, lawfully admitted permanent resident, and a non-citizen granted temporary legal residence under the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986 or VAWA of 1994. There are separate cash programs, county cash programs for U visa immigrants and refugees that they could apply for, separate from general assistance. And I just wanted to note that there are some, rare situations where an undocumented general assistance applicant or recipient can be approved for GA as part of a director's exception. A director's exception is, basically under extenuating circumstances, the director can allow a person to receive benefits, but they're very rare. So that's not something that I would rely on. Next slide. Okay, so the interim assistance reimbursement or IAR. So this is again a program that kicks in when an application for SSI or CAPI has been granted. And I'll talk about CAPI actually in the next slide. So if you're approved for SSI or CAPI, then the amount of aid that you receive between your approval and when your benefits start can be withdrawn from your retroactive benefits and paid back to the county as reimbursement for the GA program and the benefits that you received. So it's kind of a way for the county to recover or claw back some of the money that was paid while you were eligible for these federal programs. So for CAPI, the apportionment or the amount that's going to be withheld will be included on the notice of action. For SSI, within 10 days of Social Security, of the SSA's issuance of benefits, you'll be notified that this is being withheld. You'll receive an apportionment form, and then it'll have the breakdown of the amount retained by the county. So you'll be able to see how much money is being withheld and being used to repay the county. Next slide. And I think the order of this was switched. This should have been one earlier. That was my bad. But this is going back to the Cash Assistance Program for Immigrants, also known as CAPI. And this is related to the SSI program because it's essentially the state program, state version of SSI. And it's meant to fill in the gap that's created because the federal program doesn't offer benefits. The federal SSI program doesn't offer benefits to certain immigrants without documentation. So at least in California, we have a state program that fills in that gap by providing cash assistance to some elderly or disabled immigrants who are denied SSI solely because of their immigration status. So the disability determination is the same as SSI or SSDI. You must be a documented immigrant. You must meet income and asset requirements similar to SSI, and you can apply at county social services, so 1919 Center Road. Next slide. And then this is just the form for the interim assistance reimbursement. And this is a sample of what you might receive from the county notifying you about a withholding. And that's it for us. If anyone has any questions, I think Rachel and I were answering some questions in the chat.
It looks like there's a question. Yeah, I think Maya and I were answering questions as they came up. It looks like somebody put in a question about 56-year-old undocumented one-year dialysis eligible for CAPI. Unfortunately, CAPI is not available for persons who are undocumented with some very, very limited exceptions. So CAPI is a program that basically says if you're not eligible for SSI because you're not a citizen, you can apply for CAPI as long as you have lawful residency or lawful status in the United States. So you're a non-citizen, but you still have lawful status here. So an undocumented individual would not be eligible for CAPI.
Oh, yeah, and I'm sorry if I
So,
misspoke earlier when I was presenting on
okay.
CAPI.
so would I be in error in referring them to Social Security to be denied to apply for CAPI?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like if you're an undocumented, and I, recently came across this issue too because I was helping a client and I hadn't seen this before, but if a person is undocumented, they won't even have a social security number.
Correct.
And so Social Security can't issue them the standard, we've vetted you and you aren't eligible because of immigration status. They'll say something, they'll issue a letter that says something like, you don't even have a social security number, so they can't even take a formal application. And then you could get that letter, but it would be fruitless, because then if you went to CAPI would say, thanks for applying, but you're not eligible because of your immigration status as well. So if you're undocumented, you're not going to be eligible for CAPI, which is, really troubling. I wish there was some program that allowed even undocumented disabled individuals to have some source of income. But for CAPI, unfortunately, you do have to have legal status. So typically, you're an LPR, have a green card. So you're not a citizen, so you can't get SSI, but you're still here lawfully, and you can then apply for CAPI if you're age 65 and older and low income, low resource, or you're disabled and low income, low resource. But there is that immigration requirement or lawful status requirement.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Juan, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was wondering, I'm kind of missed a little bit about the talk with GA and being able to provide funded financial assistance to clients or individuals in the community for housing. Is 342 the highest amount that is paid to landlords?
Yes. Yeah, that's the highest amount that a person can receive in GA. And I think it depends on the living situation, whether that full 343 goes to the landlord or whether the person keeps their personal needs of 147 and the remainder goes to the landlord. But the maximum would be 343
And
for
I
an
was just
individual.
gotcha, thank you. And I was just thinking realistically, there's not something that this would cover for any type of housing situation here in this county, correct?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sometimes I'm not a housing expert, I'm sorry. But I think there's sometimes instances where a person's on some very subsidized housing, so maybe federally subsidized. And so their portion of the rent is only $50 or $100 or a percentage of what their income is, in which case GA would cover that. But again, I'm not a housing expert, so I don't know how all of those programs work, but I know that sometimes we have clients who are very, very, very limited rent because the housing is federally subsidized, and then the landlord would say, okay, well, you still owe me, $200 or whatever the amount is, and then that could be paid out of GA. But yes, practically speaking, there's very little housing, especially in the private market, that GA assistance would cover.
Yeah, no, thank you for that and all that. Yeah, so much.
Looks like we also have a question in the chat. Could a client still qualify if their spouse is working minimum wage, no children?
I believe that the spouse's income would be deemed, I don't know if entirely or a portion thereof, but some of that income would be deemed to, meaning attributable to the person who is trying to apply for GA. So I think it really depends on how much that spouse was working and earning, because as long as it wasn't over the GA threshold, I mean, they were working minimum wage and maybe only 5-10 hours a week, then potentially they could be eligible. But if the spouse is working and earning more than that $343 rate, then no, they're likely not going to be eligible because their spouse's income is deemed to them. And I'm sorry, I don't know all the deeming rules off the top of my head, but that's generally what the rule should provide. Do clients approved for GA get assigned a case manager? Yes. So typically the way it works is there's an eligibility worker, and those are the workers who review applications and do an eligibility determination for any of the social services programs. including general assistance. And then once a person is on a benefit program, whether it's GA or Medi-Cal or CAPI, then a case manager is assigned. And the person who's applying, let's just say for GA in this instance, because that's the topic of the presentation, they'll get a notice of action that says you've been deemed eligible for general assistance, your benefits are XYZ a month. And at the top of the notice, it will list your case number, and it will list your caseworker and the caseworker's phone number. Yes, there should be translation services available to people who are trying to complete application on the phone. Yeah. And I know Maya touched a little bit on language access. And so, yeah, social services is committed to making sure that any language that is required by the applicant is provided through translation services.
Any other questions in the last couple minutes we have? Is it
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
is it usual for an appointment to receive GA to be 3 months out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's usual because I think so much depends on what's going on with the county. Right now, I think that's typical, unfortunately. I don't know that that's usual generally. I do know, and we have quarterly meetings with the Social Services Agency, DEBS, which is the Department of Employment and Benefit Services, which is the agency within social services responsible for the administration of this program. We meet with them quarterly, and we're actually going to meet with them next month. But what they've been telling us in past quarterly meetings is that the number of GA applicants is way up. And so it is taking them longer to process them, to get people scheduled for phone interviews, and to get the application approved and benefits started. So I think at this point, 3 months is typical. Sadly, I don't know if that's always the case, and we're hoping to talk to social services next week and see, how long is this trend kind of consistent? Do we see any kind of any point in the near future when GA applications will be processed even quicker than that? But right now, I think that it is fair to say that it's taking a couple of months for GA applications to be reviewed, interview scheduled, benefits approved, and benefits started. So right now, 3 months is pretty typical, unfortunately. But I know Maya provided information from Mariela, so if you feel like somebody's waiting an unusually long time, or there's some extraordinary circumstances you feel haven't been addressed, it's great to get a release of information from your client side, and you can reach out to Mariela and just say, here's the situation, can you look into it? And she'll tell you, I'm sorry, that's just taking a long time, or oh no, something got dropped, let's look into that. So that's always one option too, if you feel like somebody's waiting an inordinate period of time before their general assistance gets approved.
Thanks, Rachel. It looks like we're quickly approaching 11:30. So I put in my email in the chat. If you have any questions that went unanswered, please feel free to pass them along to me via email, and I can contact Maya and Rachel and get those answers for you. And we can also compile the questions that you all asked and the answers to send out with the materials and everything. The slides will be sent out to folks, and the recording is going to be posted on the CoC's website. So thank you so much, Rachel and Maya, for this wonderful training, as well as our WIC trainers as well. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And please fill out our training feedback form that I posted a little bit earlier. I can go ahead and post it one more time so you can open up that link before you sign off. We do take a look at your feedback and try to improve our trainings for next year. Thank you all.